the announcement and the stroke of a signature that many of you may recognize and remember when he was Reserve Bank Governor, of course, for 10 years, between 1999 and 2009. Tito Mboweni is the new Finance Minister after the former Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene tendered his resignation, and he said that he had to resign because the project that was currently underway of restoring confidence and good governance in the country was too important, and it might be sidetracked. It was at risk of being sidetracked and distracted if he continued in office. The President applied his mind, and he felt that it was the right time to accept this resignation, and so immediately appointed Tuynhuys Media as the Finance Minister. To help me unpack what's just happened, I'm now joined in studio by our very own head of the business news team here at the SABC, Thandeka Mbeki. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And next to you, you have Professor Yanni Rousseau, Head of School, School of Economics and Business Sciences at Wits University. Let me start with you, Thandeka. So in the days leading up today, there was speculation. Some names were starting to come through already. And I must admit, personally, I was a bit surprised the name of Tito Mboweni coming through, but I suppose when it's all come out and we look at his history, maybe it wasn't such a great surprise.
Indeed, I wasn't surprised by the choice of Tito Mboweni, but today is significant. It's a historic day. It's significant maybe on 3 counts. It's significant because the choice of Tito Mboweni is perhaps going to be seen as a choice of a particular policy trajectory in economics. A choice of orthodox economics, and particularly a particular stance that we are very familiar with in monetary policy. So it's also quite historic that Nhlanhla Nene chose to fall on his sword. In our political culture, that was getting to be something that was a bit of a problem, that politicians discovered to be in the wrong or having fallen foul of their oaths of office simply apologize and we all move on, as if an apology excuses or washes away the consequences of improper public behavior. Now, this falling on its sword is historic because after 10 years in which politicians found to have been foul on governance grounds have just dug in their heels, and the bigger the allegations, they would just dig in. And it's the return to public life of somebody we are very familiar with, and that signature that he just signed onto his oath of office is that signature that's on our banknotes. And many of our old banknotes, we remember, have that very distinct signature. But we decided today to invite Professor Rousseau with us because he worked with Tito Mboweni at the Reserve Bank. Even though he now heads the economics department at Wits, there were very historic times with Tito Mboweni at the bank, at the central bank.
Yes, hello Peter, hello Thandeka. Thank you for the invitation to talk about Mr. Mboweni, a person I have the highest respect and regard for. I've worked with him at the central bank, as you've said, for many years. He's an excellent choice as Minister of Finance. But let me also add that I have the highest respect, highest regard for Mr. Nene to have done the right thing and resigned. And I hope that Mr. Nene's resignation will send a signal, will start a new trend in government where people who are in the wrong do the right thing, do the honourable thing, and resign from such positions. So let me really say I have high regard for Mr. Nene's conduct. That is what we expect from cabinet ministers. Then turning to Mr. Mboweni, it's an excellent appointment. He is a very good administrator. He's very knowledgeable about the economy. He made a big success as governor of the South African Reserve Bank. And we have the same high expectations of him as Minister of Finance.
So I'm going to get to Tito Mboweni just now, but just to close off and Nhlanhla Nene properly, perhaps in many ways a precedent has been set now. The President was quite careful to say and point out that, look, he hasn't been found guilty of anything. There was an error of judgment, and that he felt that it was a sign of his character actually to fall on his sword, as you said. Will that mean that anybody right now who perhaps might fall into this category of error of judgment, having gone to the Gupta compound, visited the family, has now got to step forward because Nhlanhla Nene has led the way of what to do?
I feel sorry that the president is in the position in which he is, in the sense that you cannot reshuffle or replace ministers every single day. And there are so many ministers and so many people implicated, just judging from the Gupta leaks alone, who will perhaps have to consider falling on their swords. And yes, this is the threshold now that has been set by Nhlanhla Nene. But we mustn't forget the service that he did do the country in his time as minister of standing against state capture.
Right.
For me, Peter, the error of judgment of Mr. Nene is not so much visiting the Guptas. Obviously, he did that on instruction of then President Zuma, at whose pleasure he served in cabinet. The error of judgment was, in my view, not disclosing it when confronted with the fact. I do not see visiting the Guptas as the error of judgment, but the non-disclosure at the time as the error of judgment. Cabinet ministers visited the Guptas on instruction of President Zuma. It was an error of judgment by President Zuma at the time, but we cannot say that everybody who visited the Guptas should now resign. But people who were not candid about it, who were not forthcoming about it, there is the error of judgment.
All right, the market is flat at the moment, literally 0 points at the moment, 0.01%. So this suggests that this has had a calming effect that was required to put the right person in place and deal with the Nene situation straight away.
That was swift action from the presidency. The finance portfolio is not a portfolio you can leave hanging and in limbo for a long time. So that was swift and it was a definite move to calm the markets and to reassure South Africans that we are in a safe pair of hands.
All right. So Tito Mboweni, tell us about his decision-making, his ability to lead and to manage, and why you think he's going to be a good minister.
Mr. Mboweni is a clear leader. He's very well respected. He gets on well with people. And in a leadership role, it's necessary to take people with you. In that sense, he instills confidence in his leadership style. He builds a good relationship with the people that he leads. And in any ministry, it's very important to build a relationship with the government department. We've seen in many cases in South Africa where the ministry and the government department that the minister is responsible for ended up in low-scale warfare with one another. This will not happen under Mr. Mboweni. We also have to remember that Mr. Mboweni served in cabinet under President Mandela about 20 years ago, so he understands the protocols of cabinet and understands the role of cabinet ministers from that perspective. So that experience, plus his experience at the Reserve Bank, plus the fact that that he commands high respect from international investors, bankers, etc., and is highly regarded in South Africa, will help him to ensure success in this portfolio, and we desperately need that. I have real confidence in Mr. Mboweni to be a good finance minister.
I'm just hoping that we'll see less orthodoxy and more economic policy innovation, because he's coming into a portfolio at a time of a recession and at desperate times, and many of the old stock of policies has not worked. In fact, they have failed dismally, and we are hoping to see more policy innovation, more ability to test and push the envelope when it comes to policy initiatives that can take us out of the current recession and the low growth trap in which this economy finds itself.
All right, so the markets seem to think that it's a good choice. Let's get a view from Labour now. We're joined on the line by SAFTU General Secretary